All right, welcome everybody to this Lucro Masterclass, maximizing your practice capacity. If you've ever heard me talk, you've probably heard me talk about this concept. I think it's one of the most underutilized concepts in our entire profession, in the healthcare profession in general. You have to know your capacity. If you want to go anywhere, if you want to get to any next level that you haven't been yet, you have to first understand where you are right now. Once you understand where you are right now and you understand what you're already paying for, then you need to maximize that. So the very first step of maximizing your capacity is knowing your capacity. If you've ever heard me talk about scaling, I have a very, very simple formula. Maximize capacity, increase capacity, repeat. That is the entire formula for scaling. First and foremost, though, you need to understand and know what your capacity is. Once you know what your capacity is, then you can go about maximizing your capacity. Then you can go about increasing your capacity. Then you maximize your capacity then you increase your capacity. And that's the entire formula for scaling. There's nothing else more to complicate it to that, but you don't understand your capacity from the very get-go, then you're not able to do the simple formula to scale and grow and continue getting to the next level. So that is what we're going to do today. Is we're going to do a live breakdown inside the Lucro software and show you the exact tools that we have in the software. If you're watching this and you're already a client, this is in your software. If you are not a client watching this, all you're going to go to is morelucro.ai and create your own account. Pause this video right now, and you're going to want to do this live during this call because we're going to walk through step by step how you can understand your capacity, know how to maximize your capacity, and have immediate action steps by the end of this masterclass. So Dean is one of our CFOs at Lucro, and I'm going to pass the wheel over to Dean. Dean's going to walk you through this next steps, and we're going to do a live capacity calculations for everybody watching this. Let's do it, Dean.
Thanks, Dr. J. It's nice to be back with everyone. So I'm going to jump right into the dashboard. And so all of you that are on the new dashboard, this is our new and improved dashboard. And a lot of what we have built in this dashboard is to give you the power to analyze your data in a completely different way, but also giving you the power to do calculations like the calculation we're going to take you through today. And so we are specifically going to focus on the capacity calculator tool. But just as Dr. J started the conversation when he spoke about the cycle, what you have to think about in terms of growing your practice, we have it for you in the Lucro Flow. So you come to resources, Lucro Flow, you can click on each one of these. And in essence, just conceptualize the flow and the thought process that you need to take yourself through when you think about scaling your practice. But the first point in every single conversation about scaling is to figure out what is your capacity, and you need to calibrate capacity. Just a quick example, I was on a call just yesterday, a fractional CFO call with an owner, and he asked me right at the start of the call, do I think he has too many team members or he's paying his team too much? And actually, I can't answer that out of the bat. But what I do is, and what I do in each one of these instances, I do a capacity calculation. And once I did the calculation, the conversation completely changed from, am I paying my team too much, to what are you doing in terms of marketing? Because what we were able to do is we were able to find that it's totally realistic to utilize this team well enough. The volumes that it requires to consider this team utilized well enough isn't unrealistic. We just found that after we found that conversation to that to be realistic, we could get to a conversation of what are you doing to drive new patients? What are you doing to fill the capacity? And so a lot of owners want to jump to drive demand. They want to jump to hiring new people. They want to optimize operations. But you can't do that unless you understand where are you and where do you need to be. And only then can you start figuring out what the journey is in between. And so I'm going to jump right into the capacity calculator. The rest of you can play around with some of these tools as well, because you have availability to the dashboard now. But my capacity calculator looks slightly different from yours currently, and that's because I have done some pre-work just to make sure that for the sake of time, I'm going to be able to guide you through this effectively. But you're going to be greeted with a screen that's going to prompt you to calibrate your practice or set up your practice. And so you can always edit your setup. And so I'm going to click on edit setup. And so when you click on setting up your practice, you'll be greeted with this screen. So everyone just click on set up practice, just for everyone that still needs to log in to just get there. And then you'll be greeted with this screen. Now, what you're going to be doing here is you're in essence going to set up the constraints of your practice. You're going to set the parameters of your practice. Where do you want to be? What is the ability of your practice to generate revenue? Now, there are 4 screens that we're going to work through briefly. The first one is practice hours. Now, this is in essence quite self-explanatory. What are the hours that your practice is available for treating patients? And so in my example practice, it is Mondays to Fridays, 8 to 6, But on Tuesdays, they're open only until 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. Because the afternoon is set aside for team training and administration. Okay, so that's my example. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to a minute just to set up your own team, your own hours for your practice, and then I'll jump to the next one. Okay. I know Dr. J is calibrating his capacity in the back end as well. So Dr. J, you can just give me indication once you are done with the screen.
Yep. I would say a lot of offices are, have a shift. So they have a morning shift and afternoon shift.
Yeah.
So we need to improve and change that functionality. So right now, guys, if you let's say you're open from 9 to noon and 3 to 5, right? And that equals 5 total hours. Just change it from 9 to 2 for now, just equal the same total number of hours. So like I said, we literally just finished building this calculator, and that's one of the things that we just need to change, have the software development team update. So if you're in there, like I said, and you have multiple different shifts or 3 different shifts in a single day, just make that range equal the same amount of hours that you're open for the day. The actual hours that you're open really doesn't matter. It's just calculating the total number of hours that the clinic is open.
Next up is your rooms. And so this is just a representation of your location or your brick and mortar location and the capacity that we want to set there. So what you would do here is you would just, I've created a couple of rooms for this fictitious practice. They have 3 adjustment rooms, 1 therapy room, massage room, and exam room. And I'm just going to demonstrate how you can set up your own rooms. You can set up a room, for example, room. You can say which treatments are actually taking place in that room. So for example, rehabs, and then you can set it. And that will then allow you to set up all the rooms and what type of treatments you do in that underlying room. And so you can go through this now, and I'm just going to give you a couple minutes just to set that up for your practice. So if you have multiple treatments within a specific room, you don't have to worry about that in a second. We'll get to that when we walk through treat appointment types. Right now, it's only the room, and then it's an example of what type of treatment you typically do it, just to label that type of room. So if you have rooms that are multifunctional, that's fine for now. We're going to get to that in a second.
Dean, what about if they have one room that, let's say, has multiple decompression tables in it? Should it just still be just the one room itself?
Yes. Yes, and you can set the treatment as decompression. The next screen that you can click on is team members. Now, right now, at this point, you don't have to worry about all of these team members I have here. What this does, it in essence pulls from another calculator that we have. We've built it in such a way that it cross-pollinates in terms of the information. But right now, what you need to do, you add a team member. So you add a team member, you add the name, their position, either if they're a doctor, associate, therapist, rehab specialist, whatever they do in your practice. And you can choose to either allow clinic hours, which is then they just match your hours of your clinic. So they every hour that your clinic's open, they treat patients. Or you can click here and you can set custom hours for each clinician or team member that treats patients. And so this is specifically team members that treat patients. If you have front desk team members, you don't have to worry about that because we're just trying to calibrate capacity. So it's actually team members that treat patients. In the same way with your rooms, it's only rooms that is used in the treating of and caring for patients. So that's a good segue into, in essence, each practice, you have 2 types of team members: direct team members that actually treat patients or care for patients, and you have indirect team members that are your back office and your supporting staff. If you have a chiropractic assistant that also helps with the front desk and they only have 50% of the time available to see patients, what you then can do is you can then choose them as, for example, a chiropractic assistant, and you can just manually toggle. You don't have to worry too much about the hours, 8 to 6 or whatever. You just manually allocate the amount of hours that they have available to actually treat patients. So if you have a hybrid role, you can create almost a custom hours for them. If they do 3 hours a day for treating patients, it'll be 8 till 11 in this case. And so you can just think about it in that time. That way, we're trying to think, how much hours does this individual have available to treat patients? And then we want to calculate eventually how many hours is that individual actually being occupied in terms of treating patients. The last one in terms of setup is your appointment types. So this is where all of the other categories starts tying in. And so what you would do, I preempted some of them, but you would create appointment types. So in this case, we could say day 1. If this is what you call it, you can set the duration. Let's say it's 60 minutes in this case. It's quite a comprehensive consultation. Let's say it charges around about $110 per visit. And then in this instance, you can actually set which room or treatment type do you a room does it cover? So let's say the consultation room in this case, and then who is part of this. So if you have a case manager, that's part of this. If you have associates in this case, that's part of this. You can set that, and then you can set it. You can also choose multiple roles if you have associate and a doctor, or either associates or doctors or case managers, whoever's involved. You can set that. And this is where all of the other elements, the rooms, the team members, all of them start tying into this. And it's going to be quite important for the rest of the calculation. So this is part of almost the hard yards in terms of setting it up. It's something you don't have to do often. It's only when you have some of these variabilities that change. Your rooms typically won't change unless you change some of your office flow. But team members, if you find that your team members start working different hours or have more availability or less availability, if you add more direct team members, this is when you'll start changing these elements or new appointment types or changing your fee. But for the most part, this stays stationary across all of the calculations that you do. So now you can hit calculate. And this is going to throw you into the capacity calculator. The capacity calculator is set up. Okay, there are two types of calculations that we allow you to do. Firstly, it's a quick calculation that you don't have to break it down into the underlying numbers. This is very, it's just a quick estimate that you can do if you want to play around with it. I'm just going to take you through this in a second. And then we have the more detailed calculation. So I have preempted some of the inputs from my side. And so with a quick calculation, what it does, it brings in all of the treatment types that you have or that you have listed in your setup. And then what you can do is you can then, in this block here, you can input what is your weekly volume of patients that you actually see or visits that you actually have for each one of these treatment types. And so in this case, it's around about 411 adjustments. It's around about 10 minutes of adjustment that I set up earlier, around about 51 decompressions, 41 shockwave, 24 massage, 7 neuropathy sessions, and then 10 new patient exams. So that's a quick way. That's the only thing you need to input in this quick scenario. And that's why it's quick, because you just input these numbers. And I'm going to give you a second to do that. And I'm going to explain the outputs of what it gives you. Let me go to capacity calculator. You can then go and edit your team. And you can then add, for example, a new team member. And then you will be able to see what your potential income could be with this new team member. We typically, and you'll see this breaking it down per week. I know some clinicians think about it as per week, some think about it as per month. They've volumes. The biggest reason we break it down per week is that's the lowest common denominator. It's really easy then to think about it in terms of a weekly sense, because across a month there are a lot of variabilities. Some months, especially for the more owner-run practices or owners that also treat patients, they might take leave for a week and then all of a sudden their numbers are completely off in that month. So it's much easier to find an average when you look at it in terms of a week, and that's why we boil it down per week. And so you'll see it across the board. We do like, even in the scenarios we do in the fractional CFO calls, we do like or prefer breaking down per week because it just gives us more control over the numbers that we are inputting in the scenario. Now, the first screen tells us your overall utilization rate. So currently, and it's almost a snapshot of where you're currently at. Overall, my fictitious practice, my demo practice, is seeing 53% of the potential that they could be seeing in terms of volumes. And this is built on your location. So this is saying you're seeing around about 53% of the potential that you can do in terms of your location. It also gives you a snapshot of just the areas you need to focus on. The rehab room is quite busy, as well as my busiest provider is my doctor, my main doctor, my clinic director. It also gives me an information in terms of what is my potential that is on the table if I utilize my capacity well enough. And so currently I am seeing around about $36,159 per week in volumes and treatments, and that's the 544 total visits times the collections per visit. It gets into that number. I should be able to do around about $67,000 based on my team constraints, and I'm just past halfway there of my team capacity. I'm only seeing 53% of that capacity, my room and team capacity, which means if I project that to a month, I am actually leaving $134,000 on the table, realistically leaving that on the table. And this is when we start working through the conversations of, okay, what do I need to do to get to that point, that $134,000? And this tells me this is what I'm leaving on the table. It breaks it down in this general view. It breaks down the volume per treatment as well. So it just tells me what I'm currently seeing per week. what my income is per week, and then it also breaks it down per hour. It's just another metric for us to look at if you want to consider what you are making per hour for this treatment type. I think this is especially relevant when you pay your massage therapist per hour, because you can see you're making around about $73 per hour. If you pay them $30 an hour, it's an easier way to work out the margins for them. It also then breaks it down per resource. And so ultimately, you have two categories of resources with capacity or capacity constraints: your rooms or your location, and your providers. And so they're not always directly linked. And so in this case, we see our providers are averaging around about 65%, where our rooms, and that's where the 53 comes in, is averaging well below that. And so I see I'm only using around about 51% of my treatment rooms. I'm using around about 70% of my rehab and 54% of my massage, and then it breaks down my team as well. So in this case, when I would read these numbers, I would ask myself, okay, what can I do to get my team close to that 90% number? Because that will probably get my treatments, my room for my treatments to around about 60-70%. Probably 70%. And then to get that additional portion of my treatment room to be filled up close to that 90% for my location capacity, what I can do then is I can look to appoint another clinician or a team member that can help out with that. And that's just the conversations you can start lending yourself to with this. We see my chiro assistant is well beneath capacity, and they will help me with some of my therapies that I administer. And so what I can then do is I can think about, okay, what am I doing in terms of converting my existing adjustment-based patients to therapies? Because I see I have a lot of capacity in terms of therapies that I can still utilize. And so in this case, it opens up a whole world of conversations when you look at the numbers. And then we have part of this whole dashboard, which is quite neat, is we have a lot of AI functionalities. And it does give me some recommendations that I can work with in terms of low-hanging fruit in this case. Okay, that is it in terms of the quick scenario. I would just briefly, before I jump to the detailed scenario, if you could put into the chat what you're currently doing in terms of utilization, what is your current utilization number, what is your current income potential that you're leaving on the table. It'd be quite interesting to see where everyone's at. And whether the numbers are giving you a good indication of where you're currently at. So I'm just going to give 1 minute for everyone just to throw those numbers out there. I think it's going to be very encouraging for all of us to see where we are and where we can be potentially. If you have multiple treatments in a specific room, or if you have multiple clinicians working through a specific room, if you have more customizations, and I think a lot of your customization questions that you asked earlier comes into play here, is once you have these, you can build it up in this detailed calculator. It takes a bit more time, not significantly more time, but it allows you to do much more in terms of breaking down your capacity. So I've built the saved library. I have actually preloaded one that is my current schedule. And so in my current practice, I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have 3 adjustment rooms. I have my one clinician, Dr. Marcus, is working through adjustment room 1, Dr. Elena in adjustment room 2, and Dr. Tom in adjustment room 3. They are doing these type of volumes. So now I'm breaking it up per clinician. Next up, I have my therapy room. I have 2 CAs that help there. I have a lot of therapies jumped in or bundled into that room: decompression, shockwave, neuropathy. And I have my volumes that I capture there. What you can do to capture this, you can just add a visit. You can select which pulls in essence from the numbers you created earlier. And then you can select which team member administers that and how many you do in a given week. Massage room, around about 1 massage therapist, 24 massages that I do there, around about 60 minutes of massage. And then lastly, my exam room. And then I just have 1 exam room, and I just say which clinician uses that for how many visits per week. And so you can just add that. You can say new patient exams, for example, 1, and it would be Dr. Marcus. So you can just click, you can select that and you can build it out. What this then does, it gives you much more detailed breakdown of your numbers. And this tells you then is that in this case, with this scenario that I built out, it's slightly different from the previous one, but I am sitting at around about 51.9% utilization, overall utilization. It tells me my adjustment bay 1 is, and Dr. Marcus is sitting at around about 76 and 78% utilization for them, for the room and for Dr. Marcus. And so that's just something I need to keep my eye on as I get close to capacity for them. But overall, I'm sitting at around about half of the utilization that what I can potentially do with this practice. I am able to extract an additional $152,000 from this practice when I grow my team to grow my practice to where it can be. I'm sitting at $35,000 at this point, and I need to be at $70,000 to be considered utilizing my practice fully. This then breaks down in a lot more detail. We have firstly the type of treatments and how much you do per week. And then below, and this is where the detail comes in, it breaks down per resource. So per location or per room that you utilize in your practice. So each bay, I see specifically bay 2 and bay 3 is more, it's not utilized as much as bay 1. And then I see Dr. Elena is only utilizing 58% of her capacity, Dr. Tom 60%, and Dr. Marcus is clearly carrying the weight in this practice at 78%. And so this allows me then to do a complete reconsideration of my practice. Does that mean I need to shift some of my capacity to Dr. Elena or Tom and so forth? We also can see a look at my massage room. I have quite a lot of capacity available here with both my massage therapist and my room, and I can look at my team members as well. And lastly, again, the AI comments come through where it does give you some recommendations of what you can do. What you can do then is once you look at this number, and you can update it every single month or every single week as you have those numbers for that week, you can put it through and you can just name the naming convention. You can just follow whatever that week's name is. You can just say week of 27th of July, and you can build out each and every single week, and you can keep track of your progress as you progress. You can also use this as a form of planning or calculating capacity plans that you can build. And so you can, if I just go back to my calculator, what you can then do is you can just build custom inputs. You can, for example, I know if someone wanted to potentially hire a team member, you can then build out additional visits for the new team member. And so all of that you can build in here, and it gives you new information each and every time. And so it allows you then to play around with it. You can then add team members. You can look at what does that mean in terms of my capacity. In this case, Dr. Marcus, we could shift some of his patients, some of those patients that are willing to shift over to Dr. Elena and to grow her capacity and open Dr. Marcus up to seeing more day ones because he's exceptional with day ones in this case. And that just helps open up a whole new conversation. And once we have this point, then we can get to a point where we can start having conversation about, okay, what can you do to fill that capacity? When we go back to the quick calculation, which is probably a good example of this, we can almost double our treatments in terms of our rooms. We can grow our doctors or clinicians by 20%. And what is hindering us from doing this? And then the question becomes, well, are we seeing enough day ones? Are we seeing enough new patients? What is our conversion rate with those new patients? And then you can start digesting all of those elements. But once you find that you're close to the 90, 100% mark, then there's no point in driving marketing more aggressively. Maybe you need to calibrate your capacity again. Maybe you need to increase your team or increase the constraints again, get those team members settled in, and then you start pushing those areas. And so it gives you a whole new context of your practice that helps you just get back to the Lucro Flow, helps you think about this flow properly. So every time, start calibrating your capacity, keep track with your capacity often, and then you start driving each one of these elements in your practice. And so that's just a brief overview of the capacity calculator. Please play around with it. Please shoot me a mail if you have any questions, and I'm happy to help you with building out some scenarios or thinking about some things. Myself and the fractional CFO team is more than happy to help you with this and trying to see how we can build it out for your practice.